Grab my notebook real quick.
And we are live. Welcome to the Coach Bru podcast, joined by one of my favorite people, who's actually my all-time favorite guest. I say that about all my guests, but this time I actually mean it. And that is, I affectionately call him Diamond Dave Turgeon, who is a longtime professional collegiate baseball coach. And we got to know each other through his time with the Pittsburgh Pirates organization when I came down to speak to the team at spring training for a couple of years ago. And we are kindred spirits. If there were ever somebody that I would consider like my twin brother who's just younger, I mean, would really be my twin, just younger, smarter, and better looking, it would be Coach Turge.
Save it.
So, Dave, how are you, man?
Coach, good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to having a little discussion here this morning. And I remember I still have my notes from when you came to see us, and read your stuff, read your book, and read your books. But no, man, it's good. It's good to be on. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I got to brag on you a little bit here and read your resume. You spent 13 years as a pro ball player, Yankees organization, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And played internationally as well. Then became infected with the coaching bug, like many of us get. Coached, managed with the Cleveland Indians organization, then went the college route with BC, Duke, UConn, and Virginia Tech. And you played your college ball at Davidson in North Carolina.
Yep,
awesome. Yeah. So I love your diversity of experience, college and pro. And, I think the common thread with everything you do is your commitment to developing not just a player, but developing the whole person.
Yeah.
And that's really, in my opinion, that's what coaching really is. You don't just coach an athlete, you coach a person.
Yeah.
And so many coaches just treat kids on their team like a piece of meat, and they're, expendable, and they're just coaching the athlete. And I know that you and our mutual friend, Clint Hurdle, and everyone that's with that Pirates organization, when you guys were all together, were incredibly committed to coaching the whole person.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you really make the biggest impact on and off the field. I think your impact is limited on the field when you're not coaching the whole person on and off.
Amen.
And I wanted to get together with you for a while now on a couple fronts to get you on the podcast. And then an interesting thing happened. And that kind of like prompted me to like, we've got to do this. I got a package in the mail from you, and it was a t-shirt.
Nice.
And it said this on the front. And I'm like, that looks really familiar. And then I flipped it over, and it said this on the back.
Nice.
So if you are just listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, on the front it says no pressure, no diamonds, like N-O pressure, N-O diamonds. And on the back it says no pressure, as in K-N-O-W, knowledge, and you will know diamonds. So I would love to just throw this to you, turn it over to you, unpack this for our audience. And then, after we talk about this, we're going to end up going all over the map on stuff, but I just wanted to, lead with this because this is what kind of brought us here. The phrase, the t-shirt, how did this all come to be? This gem. See what I just did there?
Yeah,
diamonds.
I love. Yeah, that's like
baseball diamonds.
Yes,
like it all fits.
Diamond Dave, the whole. So I would love to go back and revisit what you were talking about with Clint and coaching the whole person. We'll hit that hopefully again later. I think it's a key piece of holistic development. Let me get rid of this thing on my thing here. All right, there we go. So the T-shirt and the concept came about. I've in the last 5 years with the Pirates, I had been coordinator of instruction, coaching coaches, and a lot of that meant kind of walking alongside guys and working with a lot of on-field training, obviously in-game management with managers, skill acquisition, motor learning stuff at a base level, but being able to apply simple concepts and adjust training so that guys could, perform better. Ultimately, it's about helping players perform better and acquire skills to win games at 7 o'clock, right? So, but I did a number of those things. So anyway, when I was visiting last year at our extended spring training program in Bradenton, as I was going around making my stops, I used to have themes. If I was there for a week, I would have a theme, and it might be on competition, a theme, it might be on a challenge theme, it might be whatever that theme was, but I use a lot of images, I have video and stuff. And we usually have a discussion about a theme. And so one of the things I noticed early in the camp is that I felt like we could have more creativity in the work days. And so I wanted to encourage and push the coaches to take some risks and try some new things to help the players, make it a little more fun, make it a more challenging, fun and learning environment, right? So I don't know, it was one of these nights I couldn't sleep and I was watching Discovery Channel, and there was a special on diamonds, and how they're formed. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I just thought, the whole process of how a diamond is created and then found and shaped and cut and polished was extremely similar to player development. And the process that we go through, so I was like, you know what? I just was like, no pressure, no diamonds. The thought came into my head. I found some really rudimentary video on it. And it's literally like, remember the after school specials where these little cartoons to explain concepts. So I found one on how the diamond is formed. It's literally a cartoon. And I don't know if I've sent it to you or not, but I will if I have.
That's great. Yeah.
So, but basically you go, okay, I get that. And, and without going into too much depth. So I end up showing, that video to create some thought. And I asked the coaches, how do you think this
and to
applies?
make it fun.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what you're incredibly skilled at as a presenter is you're not just show up and throw up. It's have a concept that's got a hook, right? No pressure, no diamonds, and having different themes. And then given, you could have just shown like a Discovery Channel, documentary sort of video, which would have been boring. But you showed an animated cartoon, and like, even as a grown adult, you're playing a kid's game, you're coaching a kid's game. Who doesn't love an animated cartoon that illustrates your point?
No question. And I think too, you don't have them for long. You think you don't have players for long? You don't have coaches for long either. Because as you're spinning concepts to them, they're thinking about, I got BP, I got BP groups, I got my left hand and my right. I mean, the cutoffs and relays, they got stuff going through their heads. I know, I've sat in that seat. So anyway, we had a great conversation about it. And the more we kind of dug into it, and how we drew the analogy of how the diamond is formed, extreme pressure, extreme heat, a long process. Some process for a diamond is longer than others. And then getting to upper levels as the diamond is raising and coming up to the surface, being found. And then you have to continue to cut and polish. And that process of the cut and polish really does not end after the diamond is found. And I think most of the players and this better than I mean, you've coached a long time and at a really good level, coached national championships. And it's one of those things where it's a never ending process, and every kid's process is his own process. I mean, it's, you can't rush it. You can't slow it down. It is his, and you have to honor that. So anyway, we had a really good discussion on that and drawing the analogies of this process. The other piece of this for the coaches was that we are not helping players by not making a challenging competitive environment
Yeah.
in order to learn their skills. Ultimately, this is this harsh environment that creates the diamond. If we can't perform in that at 7 o'clock, which is under extreme pressure every night, so the analogies go on and on and on. I said, and we're not really helping our players. And ultimately, you get what you train. And as a coach and a teacher, if your players go out to compete and they feel like they haven't been in that spot before, they literally have no mental representations of what they're about to face. That's a problem. And um, somewhere along the line, practice became about feeling good, and feeling good and learning don't go hand in hand. It feels good to learn, but it's not a good feeling as you're trying to learn. You muddle through things, you look stupid, you feel bad at times, but you are acquiring and figuring out skills. And I think that, long story short, when we hit the guys with the concept for their training, it ended up being a concept about player development, but throw in the coach development aspect of it. We're in the same spot. You finish playing and you go into coaching and teaching. I don't know. That's a new career for me. I thought I knew pitching and defense and all this stuff before I became a manager. I didn't know much. And I played it for a while and I paid my mortgage doing it.
Yeah.
But I just knew my own little specific job. And so I think that we got a chance to drill down on training and how we can put a no pressure, no diamonds theme out. And our training became more creative and challenging and fun. And I think they started to kick people's asses during game time more often and frequently, and it became a fun thing. But we also drilled down in a later discussion about our process of becoming a master coach, which is a never-ending process as well. And
Absolutely.
and how do you want to describe it? I bet if we sat down and said, all right, we got three things, you'd probably say, all right, I read a lot, I listen a lot, I talk to other coaches a lot, and then I do a lot. I actually go out and do and experience things, and I rinse and repeat. And I think basically that's the formula that never ends for us. And I think, and it's fun. I mean, if you like to learn and teach and challenge, it's fun.
What has impressed me the most over the last few years of getting to know all you guys is there's this formula. You read a lot, you listen a lot, you talk to your peers, and the problem, and then you go execute these things. The problem with that formula is if everyone's reading the same things, everyone's talking about the same things, and everyone's doing the same things their peers are doing, everyone's going to get the same results. And that just leads to mediocrity. It leads to average. You got
No
that
doubt.
bell-shaped curve, and that's kind of the middle of the pack.
Mhm.
And that's not really where anyone wants to be. And
Right.
what you guys do is you turn that whole concept on its head. You're not reading what everyone else is reading. You're not doing what everyone else is doing. You're looking for different ideas outside your industry, outside of your profession, and you're bringing these concepts to the sport of baseball, which you've read my stuff. My
Yep.
core belief is your best ideas will always come from outside your industry.
Yep.
And it's just never been more evident than, as you're talking about, you get what you train. And historically there's always been such kind of autopilot quality to a
Yep.
lot of drills, not just in baseball but in every sport.
Yeah.
And you're not competing in practice, you're going through motions. And
Right.
muscle memory isn't enough
Yeah.
when the
No.
lights come on at 7 o'clock on game night.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those competitive elements and how you flip this whole concept on its head? You train the way you fight the way you train, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're not in the world of sports and you're listening to this right now, the parallels are tremendous, because talent development is talent development anywhere you go. If you're a manager or a coach on a baseball field, you're a manager or a coach in corporate America, you're doing the same things. You ought to be coaching the whole person. There's pressure, there's heat, there's discovery, there's refining and polishing
Yes.
anywhere you go.
Yep.
And you guys do a magnificent job of taking concepts that are unique and using them strategically to get a better result.
Yep. I think the concept that you're talking about, the whole cross-pollination thing is big for me. Coaches will ask me, hey, what are you reading? I said, any non-baseball book. Could be history, could be self-help, could be absolutely anything. And it could be Daniel Coyle's culture stuff. But regardless of what you're reading, if you are digesting, there's things that just get into you and you can apply them and help grow you, obviously, as a teacher. But to get into the compete thing, I think is, I think Bernie Holiday, our mental skills director. So Bernie I love this story he told us, and he was talking about stress immunization and how, like you get a flu shot, you put a little flu in, your body creates immunization to the flu. And it's the same thing as we incorporate stress and competition into our, training to kind of, let's see if we can perform our skill under this little stress competition. So, but the story that I really love, and this goes to the training, is that this biosphere thing in New Mexico, he talked about this biosphere, this perfect utopia building they built with the perfect oxygen, sunlight, and and they had people living there in this perfect environment. It was perfect. The water, everything was perfect. They had gardens, they had soil. They had one problem, and it was they were trying to grow trees, and they would grow these trees, and all the trees would get to a certain height and tip over. And so he asked the room, right? And so you know where I'm going with it, but he asked the room, and I was sitting there, I'm locked in. Bernie's a great storyteller. So he goes, what was the problem? And everyone was sitting there. I'm like, I have no idea, dude. And he's like, no wind.
Yep.
Stress of the wind helps the roots grow deeper. And I was like, boom, that's great. And so I thought, as coaches, if we're not providing wind and stress for our players in the training, they're not going to really have something to lean on. If you're not going to lean on your training if you don't have that.
Yeah, you hit a ceiling. You hit a natural ceiling.
Yeah, the whole feel-good concept of practice just is such a, and when I came into a lot of that in the 80s, it was a fair amount of block training and feel good, and geez, man, he had a really good BP. I don't know why it doesn't transfer. Yeah. It's like, well, because he doesn't face 45-mile-an-hour cookies down the middle all day. And so, and I just never couldn't connect the dots. But that story resonated with me very much. And I started thinking and reading and doing some real thought-provoking things on a whiteboard and trying them, And interesting fact, the more I research training, right? And I'm going, oh man, training to the truth. I'm doing all this novel stuff. Well, I always go and I look at these videos of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Ted Williams taking batting practice, and they were facing a batting practice pitcher from 60 feet, 6 inches, throwing hard, trying to get him out. And that was their practice. I'm going, so we're returning to the truth is what we're doing. And
yep.
And then being creative with it in different environments and different segments of it. So, but again, the competition thing and the ability for us as coaches to provide them that opportunity to perform and compete. And after a while, it's like, you know what? It's like a drug, man. They practice without the stress and competition. They're like, no, man, we need more. And the thing I found is that the more wind I provide for them is the more they need. And I
think the more they provide it for each other.
Oh, it's absolutely, that is such a great point. And it does, it kind of builds off itself, and guys love it and they want to be challenged. And so that's the thing, as a young coach manager, I wanted the field to be clean. And now I realize that they love challenge.
Yeah.
They crave it and they need it. And that's how you get better. And so the whole process again, no pressure, no diamonds. You're not going to know KNOW. You're not going to know pressure. If you're not going to know pressure, you're certainly not going to know what a diamond is. And that's the truth. And as is in life. Right. So
it's a great message to parents too. If there's a parent listening to this, and you're a snowplow parent or a helicopter parent or however you want to phrase that, you're not doing your kid any favors, whatever age that kid is. they need that stress inoculation response.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's hard for younger coaches to be okay with messy.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
want
and
it to be as perfect as they drew it up on the
yeah,
whiteboard,
I was there.
play
I
or
was,
whatever.
trust me,
Yeah.
I was there. And I was
Yep.
like, okay, I got brass in town. I was like a young first year manager. I'm like, you know, the next thing we had a bad infield, I'm doing the lollygagger speech like from Bull Durham. And I don't know how I get way too many lollygagger speeches early in my career. But looking back on it, that whole thing was, that was my process, and I'm still in my process. I'm trying to become a diamond and polish it and all that. And, it's never ending, but it's a fun process. I mean, I'm 55 and I'm a work in progress, and as we all are. And it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to learn. It's fun to get better. And, it's fun to kind of bring others along on your journey with you.
Yeah. I've always said if it's not fun, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because life's too short.
It really is.
Yeah.
And,
So I think
yeah,
where people can learn from you and take this with them is number one, keep your eyes out, your radar on, and your antenna up for different interesting themes.
yeah,
And then what's the hook that's really going to reel your people in and rally them around that theme
yep,
and make it creative.
yep,
Like mining for diamonds is a process. How a diamond is formed is a process. So be able to describe this theme that you have as a process. Don't just take his and try and
right,
copy it, because that's not going to be authentic and probably won't work for you and your team.
yep,
But what's your process, and understand you can't rush it.
no
And I
doubt.
think that that leads us to that whole that concept of coaching the whole person.
Yep, yep. No, that's good.
Because if you're only coaching the athlete,
Right.
that's just part of the process.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I think as you, like Clint used to use this expression, being a transformational coach versus a transactional coach. And I think, that he talked about his coaching process and how he grew as a man, as a coach, and became more of a transformational coach, where he's coaching the man first and the player second. And I think, the whole concept, when I first got into coaching, I didn't understand that. I thought it was all about the game and blah, 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 blah. And it is, but if you're coaching the man first, we understood it, the way I understand it, and I believe this to my core, is that if we're helping develop boys become men, men have a greater chance of showing up every day for work. And I can trust men to compete at 7:00 versus boys will compete if they feel good, as opposed to, this is real. And, I can trust men. I trust them to show up. I trust them to have each other's back. I trust them to hold each other accountable. The process of becoming a man, and really the player resides in the man, not the boy, and I believe that in my core. And, I think that Clint was one of the most dynamic leaders I've ever been around. I had the privilege to be around.
Yeah.
And he obviously continues to pour into my life today still. But that whole concept resonated. And I truly believe that, to my core. If you think that you're an expert X's and O's guys, and you're going to be able to bring a room together because of that, then I think you're mistaken. And even the great ones, they think, well, Saban's this and Saban has an unbelievable culture. He is a developer of men. And that is the core, and accountability and being a team and all of those concepts way before his X's and O's.
And he's also a non-linear thinker, just like you and Clint and myself,
no doubt,
in that he brings in ideas and concepts and speakers from outside his industry. It isn't just all football.
No, it isn't. And but so you're just talking about, developing men and developing the player. And it's kind of cool. I've always found it kind of cool, getting back to themes where depending on the room, you coach the team you have, and what does it need? So I've had themes of accountability.
Yep.
You know, we have a discussion on what is it? Give me examples of it. Small groups, break off. One guy represents the group. Stand up, be uncomfortable. What is that? And then as we go through our work days to revisit that concept of how did that show up at work today? Did it show up at work today?
Yeah.
And then boom, that's a theme. Boom, next theme. So you're hitting these core conviction things, and those can be your themes. And how you address it can be fun. It can be video. It can be skits. It can be anything you want it to be. And that whole process becomes not only about those concepts, it becomes about bringing your team together and your room together, and you're growing the room together, and then you're building that synergy, and it's fun. That's the fun of it. I think.
Yeah, and if you want them to be accountable, they need to take ownership of that process. They need to be the ones also presenting it, describing it, demonstrating it. Absolutely.
Just one example, one thing, but so you know the pulse of your team. You know the pulse of the individuals. What's the individual need? What's the team need? That's the conversation daily. What's he need? What's the team need? What's he need? What's the team need? And it's a never-ending, thing where you're trying to figure out the Rubik's Cube of each player and then the room. And that's the fun of it, And that's where you bring in, staff, you collaborate, get the pulse of your club and go with it, man.
If you're a millennial listening to this, ask your parents what a Rubik's Cube is. They'll be happy to tell you.
Oh my God, that's bad.
I love that reference though, because it's constantly changing. Like it
is. It's
multi-dimensional, and the colors, the things are constantly changing. And if that doesn't describe a locker room perfectly, I don't know what does, man.
It's amazing. There's a lot of life going on in a locker room.
Yep.
And has nothing to do with the sport you're teaching, and it's important to be in touch with that, I think.
Now, I've always had a belief that outmanned does not mean you're ever outmatched. And to be able to do more with less is kind of what I've always had to do at each of my coaching stops. As a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, of a startup, you've got to be able to do more with less. And the Pirates organization, that's really been, I think, the signature of what you guys have been able to do really effectively. And it's by doing things differently. I'd love to get your take on, within the talent development process and just a team itself, outmanned but never outmatched. What does that look like to you? When I say that phrase, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
First thing that comes to mind is my college coaching experience. Every single stop along the way was a rebuild.
Yeah.
I did it at places with terrible facilities, and we ended up building something out of nothing, recruiting to nothing. So what that means is we took the resources we had, not the ones we hoped to have, and we leveraged them. And we leveraged ourselves, and we leveraged our whatever it is that we were selling. And then when it came to the team concept and making things run, we really leveraged our terrible facilities. We leveraged our time. We had to be creative because of all of that, the above. Climate, in the Northeast, all that stuff made me think in a way that was way different than an ACC, top of the, SEC, the facility where it's just like, you kidding me? So, and I always remember thinking, man, wouldn't that be nice to have show up and recruit to like University of Tennessee or something like that. And I'm thinking I probably wouldn't have developed creatively if I been in those spots. And so when I look back,
those hardships force you to become a better coach. They force you to become more creative. They force you to become a problem solver.
Yes.
Like a bad facility, for example, it's not actually a bad facility. It's an awesome home team advantage.
No question.
We're used to like these weird bounces on the field because the grass sucks.
No question.
And it's not a bad facility. It's a really tough place to come and play if you're the other team.
It is. And that's a great reframe. And then as you reframe that and message that to your club, they embrace it and it becomes really powerful. So each place was the same rebuild. It was ground zero, put a culture in place. What do you want to be? All right, now let's go be that. How are we going to be that? And let's do that every single day, create our process towards that. And what are we ultimately trying to do? We're trying to help change, men and grow boys and men and win championships and help people, because most of our guys aren't going to be major leaguers, and most of them are going to be husbands and fathers and leaders in their, whatever it is they're doing. So do it the right way. But all of the stops, UConn, Duke, Virginia Tech, and then the Pirates, all identical. And when we came to the Pirates, I think it would have been, I don't know how many years it had been. So 40, it had been a long drought.
Yep.
And so they had a vision, and we flipped it. We had a plan for it, and we got after it. And we had a bunch of guys that were all about the cause, and being that and believing in that. And obviously the process is a lot of heavy lifting. But man, when it happens for you, it means so much more. It's like, when I was in college, I was on the grounds crew, and that was part of my work study gig. And I was invested in fixing the field, having no lips on the infield, cutting the grass, all of that stuff. It made me appreciate stuff. And even, when we go back to visit our alma mater, I'm very proud of what we kind of did there. We were so invested in everything. And it meant something. I think it is also making me very appreciative of having good grounds guys and, appreciating what they do. But to your point, doing more with less, I think it's really an advantage to be, in a spot that does not have all of the above. I do believe that, having too much makes you softer. I think it changes how you think.
And look how much we have in this society today, and how soft people are, and how much they complain. Oh, my Wi-Fi signal's slow. It's like the world's gonna end.
No kidding.
What'd you do before the internet? We're old enough to remember, like, we actually got work done before there was an internet.
Yeah, we had. So I told my daughter, I said I had my first phone in year 2000, and she goes, "What'd you do in college?" And I said, "Well, we had these little boards, and we stuck them on the door. We'd write a note, 'Hey, came by to see you. I'll be eating dinner at 5:00. We made plans, actually.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't all in real time, real fast, and life was different. But I'm grateful for all that.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no. So I love that whole concept. Doing more with less. It's really an advantage if you use it the right way. Almost like the whole. Did you read? I think it was David and Goliath, the book. Wasn't that? I mean, it's a great read.
Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole Gladwell concept, and you read it, and you're going, yeah, of course, David has. He had much bigger advantage on it. And so, then you start thinking of things, and you go, okay, there's a lot of truth to that in everything that we do. Really, it's all in how you frame it. I loved how you framed that earlier.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's it's interesting from a talent development standpoint too. When you're the underdog and you're outmanned but not outmatched, you got to do things differently. You've got to play the game a little differently. What's your favorite thing that you've done in your career that sort of defied the norms of your sport? Because I think, I'll give you this example, and as much as it's comedy, there's such an element of truth. I call it the George Costanza rule.
I love it.
And you remember in Seinfeld, if you're a Seinfeld fan, there's that one day where George regrets every single decision he's ever made in his life, because his life has just not turned out the way he envisioned it. And he feels like every decision he's made is wrong. So he just decides one day that he's going to do the opposite of whatever he thinks he should do. And that was the day he got the job working for the Yankees. Yeah. He met that beautiful woman who became his girlfriend. And George, he outkicked his coverage. He's not an attractive dude. He's not particularly bright. He lands the woman, and he gets, this great job by doing the opposite of what he thought he should do. And I think the people who are really successful, and you look at them and you're like, how did they do that? Well, they usually did it by doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
So
It's Warren Buffett in a nutshell.
yeah,
His investment strategy is
yeah,
completely counterintuitive.
sure.
What's your favorite thing that you're like, I'm going to do the opposite of everybody else, and it's turned out fabulous?
Well, when the first time I got released by the Yankees, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go back, get my master's, maybe teach, coach. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And honestly, I had a lot of people in my ear saying, that's a really good idea. And so I did exactly the opposite. I went and got an opportunity to play in Europe. And fast forward a year and a half later, I could, the slider was kryptonite when I was hitting. It was like, they could arm fake a slider at me. I'd swing and miss, So I ended up on the mound pitching. Not only did I went in the complete opposite direction of all my advisors.
Mm-hmm.
In my inner circle are like, dude. And so I ended up going on for eight more years and going Taiwan, Mexico, and going to these places. And I expanded my life with that decision. My horizons it became so, and it changed. My mindset has never really changed since either. And I think that opportunities have come to me because I think that way and I think differently. And as Clint would say, you know, I helped rearrange the furniture in my own head with that one decision. And I think that I look back at my process, very, very unique, very counterintuitive in a lot of different spots. I've done some different things. I do some different things teaching, and some of it has worked, some of it has grown, some of it's expanded, some of it hasn't worked. But I think that whole line of thinking is really important. I think it's important in growth. I do believe you should listen to your inner heart. And I think that really has guided me, to do that as opposed to, why don't you just do this and go, this is the, kind of what you need to do. And this is the process of what it should look like. And I think it's within you. And I do believe that my fire burns a little hotter than most. And I think that I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with different. I'm not okay with doing different for different. I am okay with doing different for improvement.
Yeah, for a reason. Yeah.
And truth over tradition, I think, is another expression that Clint used to talk about all the time. And I do love history. I'm a history guy. I love tradition, but I'm not all for doing something just because. If we have a better way to do it, let's do it. Let's do it. I think training, we talked about earlier, obviously training is just one example of that, how you can really, I literally feel like baseball industry is just starting to tap into getting back to training, getting back to real training, what that looks like. So I'm actually pretty fired up about it.
And I think, you had mentioned the comment, your fire burns hotter than most. And I think that you're talking about nature versus nurture. I think that the environments in which you've coached, the programs you inherited at the college level, each being a rebuild job, they kind of necessitate your fire burning hotter than most. And that becomes part of your programming. And, I look at it as actually having a healthy chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And I do believe there is such a thing as a healthy chip on your shoulder. It's your fire burning hotter. And some of it is the way you're wired, your personality, nature. And then other part of it is nurture. And you want to get good results at an underdog program, where you're outmanned, but not necessarily outmatched, then it better burn hotter, right?
Yeah, I agree. I like to call that the edge that you're talking about. Play with an edge, coach with an edge, learn with it. And I was the last of 7, and I've, last 7, 5 boys, 2 girls. And there was a lot of butt whoopings in there. There was a lot of competing against older, bigger, stronger, a lot. At every turn. And that never went away, whether it was in the house or out in the backyard and all of that. And I think honestly that has carried me, because nothing is handed to you. Nothing will ever be handed to you. And if there's one thing that being the last 7 is that, number 1, my mom thinks I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread because you're number 7. Then number 2, you better be competitive because you're going to get it handed to you on a regular basis. If not, or figure out some smart, creative ways to beat someone because you have to. So I think all of that stuff has really helped me and helped my wiring. You talk about nature versus nurture. I'm extremely grateful being in that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you know now that you wish you knew back when you got started in the business? It's kind of a $1 million question. What do you know now that you wish you knew back then?
So I look back on it and I thought I knew it and I didn't, and I wish I knew what I don't know. Like I don't even know if I worded that right. I know what I don't know now, which is a lot. And I have like this sense of urgency the older I get, the more I want to learn because I have this sense of urgency going, there's so much I don't even know, man. Right. That's the first thing, knowing what I don't know. And I thought, man, I'm not managing. I just finished playing. They must think I'm pretty special. Right. And I had no idea. I literally had no idea. And so, I mean, that's the first thing. But then I wouldn't have had to go through the process. I had to go through my process of learning the hard way and getting beat up a little bit. And I think that the whole concept of self-awareness goes hand in hand with knowing what you don't know, and understanding your strengths, understanding like if you throw the ball 99 miles an hour, but it's to the backstop every time, you have a really good arm, but you really don't, it doesn't play, right? So you might be a really competitive, smart guy, but if you don't know how to deal with people and bring them along and make a team and all those other things, it doesn't really play. So 99 off the backstop, or should I pitch at 92 and pitch to get this guy out, figure out how to use my strength. And if I want to reach back and throw that 99, I need it once in a while. All right, I have it. You just don't go around doing that, So I use the concept of soundtracks. I did this I write some articles for USA, and one of my concepts I use is soundtracks, and it's a self-awareness exercise. And like, whether you realize it or not, you have this energy when you walk in a room, and it's whether you just are, okay. It's where you are. It's where, it's, this guy walks in and it's like Thunderstruck from AC/DC's playing, and is, behind him, or Jaws, where, oh, geez, this guy, or, he's chill, or, but to have awareness of what your soundtrack is, I think is a big deal. And I wrote some articles on that. I used to do
love that.
I used to do this article or this exercise with the team, and picking, hey, if I was a soundtrack, what would it be? And some guys were like, what? That's me? I'm like, yeah, I mean, yeah. And then as you get older and you have some awareness, then you become aware of your thing and what does your player need? What does the team need? And you can turn your volume up and down. But I think that self-awareness piece, is something that, you have to continue to kind of drill down on yourself to be able to help others, really.
Yeah. I think it's a tough part for a young leader, or whether it's a first-time manager in corporate America or a first-time head coach, is when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right.
You've only got that one tool in your toolbox.
That's it.
And
that's a great point.
And also, like, you tend to coach the way you were coached, because that's the only example you have. There are very, very few people who, actually went to school,
right,
and got academic training in coaching. Those are few and far between. It tends to be kind of a lateral entry profession, so to speak. And you tend to coach the way you're coached, for better or for worse, which makes
such a great point.
The mentor all the more important to you and your development when you go into the profession.
No doubt. No question. So the idea too, like I've had, so, when I started into this thing, I look back at 20 years ago and I was like, wow, I had some unbelievable people that were actually pouring into me. And I literally didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, all right, I'm seeking counsel. I'm seeking, wisdom. I'm seeking, that experience, that knowledge, that wisdom, all of those things. But I just think it's important to have that inner circle of people that have done things that maybe either you want to do, or they're more advanced than you, or they're like-minded and that they like to learn and get challenged. So I just think it's really important to have those guys in your life. I still have this, speed dial with all of my guys. Hey, what are you reading? What's up? What have you learned? What do you think? And it might be a lunch, it might be a call, might be a text, might be the exchange of an article. But I think to constantly seek that out is really important. And, the whole mentor thing is big. And I'm sure you have a Mount Rushmore of guys that you run to that have helped you grow. And you'll probably never stop doing that. I think that's part of our, if you really truly like to learn and grow, I think that's got to be a part of your deal.
Yeah. And that's something I worry about in our society today is a lack or a loss of intellectual curiosity.
Yeah.
It seems like nobody reads anymore. There's that old expression, TLDR, too long didn't read. We have I recently read an article in Business Insider, and I had mentioned this in my book, Stadium Status, that there's the human attention span is getting shorter and shorter to the point where the adult human attention span is 6 seconds and a goldfish is 7.
That's about right.
We literally have a shorter attention span than a freaking goldfish. So, and that's part of like and this brings us back as we're wrapping up here, it brings us back to the beginning of our interview, like have a theme, have a hook, make it entertaining. Like it needs to be that animated cartoon of mining diamonds, not a long drawn out documentary, because most people aren't intellectually curious, or they just don't have the bandwidth, the attention span. And it does scare me that people don't lean on that Mount Rushmore of mentors, or don't have a library, like
right.
How big's the size of your TV versus the size of your bookshelf?
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I think so. Clint obviously has impacted me in many ways. And one of the things I realized about Clint and how he impacted me was so much through storytelling.
Yep.
And he is hilarious. He's really smart dude, well-read. And you know what? He makes you feel like $1 million, and there's a reason for the story, and I love it. And, but the storytelling aspect, and again, and talk about, mentors and mentorships. I think it's important, so I have this guy, Ted Kugak's another one of my mentors. Teddy, 3 rings with the A's in the early 70s. He's a utility infielder.
Mm-hmm.
And he continues to pour into me into his, mid-late 70s. And he is a great storyteller, and I seek out his stories. And, when you're in a moment and you're experiencing in your life, in your profession, with your team, whatever, I think it's critical to understand when you're in a moment. Yeah. Number one, I believe that you don't take moments for granted. And the older I get, the more I realize that it's so important to realize when you're in a moment, this is a moment you're gonna tap into this, and you're gonna pass this on. And I think as a player, I didn't do enough of realizing that I was in a moment till I was well past. But I have gotten better at that. And the storytelling aspect to me is critical, especially with a room. And here's the stories they don't want to hear about. Your play, when you start coaching, I was like, they want to hear about my career, and like they don't care. Can I trust this guy? Can he help me? Can I trust him? Can he help me? That's all I want. And so if you're going to tell a story about your career, you can tell them about how the time I lasted 1/3 of an inning and I gave up 4 home runs and couldn't get, So those are the stories. They're like, oh, this guy's human. Okay, I get that. So
Exactly.
if you're going to tell stories like that, that's fine. But really, the stories of experience that you've drawn upon from others is I think, critical. And I think that we don't tap into that enough, man. And, my folks are 90 and, they still tell story.
Mhm.
And, and I listen more and more, and,
Absolutely.
I believe in that. I believe that's a really important part of leadership and teaching.
I think that's a great point to wrap up on, is to be a lifelong learner, continue to listen. You think about stories that people tell. Why do you think Jesus taught through parables?
Yeah.
I mean, this is timeless
Yeah.
because they resonate,
Yeah.
and to,
That's awesome.
have the self-awareness to know when to tell the story and not make it about you,
Yeah.
would be probably some of the best advice that anyone can draw from
No doubt.
in this
No doubt.
interview. So, uh, Coach, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you jumping on here with us. What's the best
Awesome.
way if people want more information, they want to get in touch with you, follow you? How should they reach out?
So I'm looking up on my phone. I don't even know my Twitter handle. At David Turgeon 45. I'm on Twitter. If I throw some of my content out there, my articles and stuff like that, and then you can direct message me. And if you have some questions or you want to catch up through a phone call,
Awesome.
we can do that. And I'm on LinkedIn, and you just look me up on there. I will leave you with this thing. I have a big whiteboard in my office here. And at the top of it, and this has been over COVID, there's a couple things that I'm not really great at. And I remind myself when I come in here every day, and it's be present and listen, right? So, and actually be present, and then, whatever it is that you're doing, be where your feet, and then are you a good listener? And I've never been accused of being a great listener. Part of that's like, I'm like all over the map. I mean, you can tell, in a conversation, we can get rolling, and all of a sudden my brain goes in different spots. So, but being present and listening, I think, goes along with the self-awareness piece. And I'm trying to get better at those two things. I think it's important to have something that's in your face, every day, where you're trying to improve that.
Yep.
And those two things challenge me every day. Just ask my wife, Teresa, she'll tell you that.
Yeah, my wife tells me I'm not really good at two things. One's listening, and then some other thing she said. I forget.
I'm going to use that. That's
So,
good.
awesome. Great catching up with you.
Awesome, Coach.
Folks, follow him. Your life will be better because of it. You'll be smarter. It's at David Turgeon 45 on Twitter. Message him, hook up with him on LinkedIn, connect there. And remember, no pressure, no diamonds. No pressure, no diamonds. So
There it is.
I got the front of the shirt here.
That's good.
And
Thanks,
the back
Coach.
of the shirt here. Appreciate you, Coach. And again, it's at David Turgeon 45 on Twitter. Give him a follow. And that is the Coach Bru Show. We will catch you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. Coach, give me a buzz. Hit me up.